how to take feedback. Welcome to Mark and Pete, and this episode we're looking at how to take feedback for things, I don't know, like podcast episodes. The internet has made feedback instant and constant and occasionally unhinged. Yes, this is Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's our first thought.
If inquisitive feedback provides food for thought, then take time to chew on every question, though you might feel overwrought as you suck on each suggestion. Well, yes, there's a lot of food for thought for that. Now, of course, when it comes to getting feedback, we all react in different ways. Some react very positively, some negatively. Well, we'll explore this, and indeed, we're going to talk about the Mark and Pete feedback when it comes to some of our episodes. Mr. Pete, I know that feedback comes in personal life, business life, etc. But what say you about having a critique of yourself?
Well, I have to say, one of the things, although you're meant to be open to it, one of the things I like least is people giving a critique of what I've just done, especially if I've just done something. It's a bit like an actor coming off the stage. What the actor wants to hear is, "Oh, your performance was lovely, darling." Not, "Well, you forgot your lines in the second act, and you were a bit dry, and I couldn't hear you." They don't want that sort of thing. So it's difficult to say. However, it is of course incredibly useful, but it's the timing, I guess, of when it's done. Who gives the feedback? For example, the same actor may well have responded differently to the director saying such things the next day in the cold light of day. So, yeah, feedback is a good thing. It is very useful. But the way it's done and the way that you receive it can have a huge effect on how you respond to it. It's very difficult, isn't it, especially in the creative world, to accept feedback shortly after you've done something, because the thing you've produced is like your child. You know, who wants to be told, Mark, that their child is ugly?
Well, indeed. Well, I'm sure that we've all faced that critique at some point in our
Well,
lives. Now, what's
yes.
interesting is, as you quite rightly say, when it comes to a creative performance, you like those sort of great applause and cheers rather than the boos and people stamping away into the exit. But the fact is that in business, it's quite common to have feedback. It's what's called like a 360. You get a full analysis of all of your skills, traits, your qualifications, your ability to manage, your ability to interact, etc. Now, what's interesting is the London School of Economics classifies feedback into four key areas. Now, the first one is positive conditional. That's positive feedback based on something that the individual has done. The positive unconditional is positive feedback for no reason. There's negative conditional, change feedback based on something that the individual has done, but there's also negative unconditional. Now, change feedback with no reason in the workplace, for example, where you should only give conditional feedback because you never use unconditional feedback when it comes to business. Now, the fact of the matter is that sometimes this can expose some weaknesses. So when somebody is placed in a situation of critique, you really often tend to sort of rather instinctively focus on the negative. But really, what I think is important particularly in business, is make sure you balance it with the positive. Because remember, the whole point behind this, it should be with the aim of being constructive. And that's the constructive feedback, which I think is really helping the individual. You can actually literally undermine somebody's confidence, whoever they are, whether they're a CEO or whether they're just somebody who's a graduate who's just starting their job. It's very easy to do. But what you ultimately wanted to do is make sure that they contribute to the business and that they can actually
Yeah.
improve. Now, Mr.
Yes.
Pete, I want to ask you, when it comes to feedback in society, often people wonder why on earth that they should even be given feedback in a corporate environment. They sort of expect it. But in society, it's maybe not something that everybody welcomes.
No, that's true. And so in society, you're not looking necessarily for feedback. You haven't got the structure that you would have in place in a good business, so that you're not expecting it, and it may be given in unhelpful ways. Um, when it comes to social media, you often get feedback on things that you say,
Oh, yes.
and it can be very, very negative. If you want to move it on to not just society, but on producing a podcast, like a podcast episodes like I do, we do get feedback, ladies and gentlemen, and some of it's very positive, which we won't bore you with. Some of it is negative, questioning the content that we put out. Now, here you don't have the structure, but that you were talking about in business, Mark, but you do have that. As long as you're aware of this, it's very helpful. You're one step removed because they're comments. You can walk away from them or ignore them or even delete them. And of course, an extreme comment would be, say, reporting you to YouTube, maybe for copyright strike or something like that. We're not talking about that. That hasn't happened to us. But if we just give an example, Mark, then maybe that will help
Yes.
people to see. Now, we put out a recent podcast episode was called "Why Is Britain the Wettest Ever?" You can
Oh,
go and
yes.
have a look at it. Now, if you were on the YouTube version of it, I think most people listen on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, but there is a YouTube version of some of the episodes, and this one had one. And there were a few comments about part of this show, which were talking about the possibility that the weather was being seeded through what are sometimes called chemtrails, the trails coming out of the back of aircraft. One commenter noted positively, yes, chemtrails, we watch them regularly, even crossing above copious clouds, supporting what we'd said. Someone else supporting what we said. Yes, there's been weather modification patents since the 1800s. And then there was a back and forth with other people on it, which is great for the algorithm, getting people to listen. But one person said, it's not rain. Sorry, I should have said just a warning. I'm going to swear, but it is a quote. It's without saying who it was. You can always go and look at the YouTube video. He comments on what we'd said and says, it's not rain, it's bullshit. Now, what he's saying is that what I think what he's trying to get across in that pithy manner that he had, this chap, was that it's not rain, it's a bullshit. Obviously, it's not. It's not what you're talking about. You're talking complete nonsense. That's one way of taking it. Now, you'll be interested to know, Mr. Mark. I don't know if you've seen this, but I did reply to this helpful
Yeah.
listener. He said it's not rain, it's bullshit, and I said that is an unpleasant image. So I I took
Yes.
the criticism as being just about the rain and not about our comments on it. Whether I was right or
Oh,
not, I don't know. But I
yes.
think so. That's the sort of comments that we get now. In this sort of case, I think it is important that we take on board, or anyone putting something themselves out in public, take note of what the public are saying. So obviously, it's a controversial matter talking about chemtrails, weather seeding. So we could factor that into our future comments on it. It's to ignore it would be ridiculous, and also to have been rude and say, "How dare you swear at me?" to this chap would also been counterproductive. You want to take it on board, but in a methodical manner. Don't take it emotionally. In most cases, it's not these aren't your friends. You don't really care in an emotional way, or you shouldn't, what they think of you. And it's being able to take that step back emotionally that enables you to take on what could be a helpful content to the comment.
Well, I also think when it comes to feedback, I mean, the public generally know what they're like, and they know what they want to see or hear. And I think that that's absolutely to your point, that is crucial. Everybody has different opinions, everybody has different areas of interest, etc., and the topics that they want to hear. But I do agree. I think that it's the way you react to the feedback. But I think that this is something that all podcasters think about, which is how do they engage with the listeners? How do they interact? And really, the way I see it is that essentially they're an extension of the team. They're part of the actual content, because whilst they can listen to obviously the dialogue that we give, what they do is that they extend that dialogue. They give their views, and that's what we want to hear. It's the ability to be able to interact. Maybe we might give some feedback of our own, which is part and parcel of the game here. We're in a world where people like to interact. Now, I know that one of the challenges behind social media and any kind of podcasting is the identity. Some people like to hide behind the identity, and maybe that they sort of sometimes, as we've seen with celebrities, that they can be sometimes targeted unnecessarily. But generally, most people, are constructive. They want to give good feedback. But I
Yes.
mean, Mr. Pete, as we sort of close out this episode, what sort of things would you advise for our podcasters to think about in terms of their next posting?
Well, I think that constructive criticism is good, but also comment on the actual content of what we're saying, give their own view, especially if it's different to ours, because then you're adding to the knowledge base of those listening. You're doing that's the most constructive thing that we can hear, something that we've missed out on, something that we've misunderstood. There's a verse in the Bible, Proverbs 27, verse 6: faithful are the wounds of a friend. So, even strong criticism or saying that, as our friend did earlier, that's bullshit, that even that can be very helpful. But flattery, oddly enough, is far more dangerous, because if we get that, we'll just end up saying the same old BS.